Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing?
All is well.
Okay, Anita, if you're there.
I'm here.
Hi, don't know if we've met.
Wait a second. Yeah, we haven't met. I live up in Kingsport, but we're coming to the Seder.
Great.
Um, so three of us are coming. We're picking up someone in Morristown on the way,
Okay,
and another friend of mine. So we're looking for a synagogue that we can at least come to periodically. It's about an hour and a half drive.
sure.
2 hours drive, but we still hopefully can participate.
Well, it's wonderful to meet you. And yeah, I mean, we'd love to, welcome you to the congregation. Here we have Gilia, and who's been with the congregation for a while, and Richard, who is still a relative newcomer, but has become very active in a relatively short amount of time. And I've been the rabbi of Heskemuna for now a couple of years, and I'm going to be sticking around some. And it's great. It's great to meet you. Are you from Kingston originally, or are you
Kingsport, no,
Kingsport?
from
Sorry.
California. Well, I grew up in Chicago,
Oh, great.
and and then I
Go
ended up
go
in
go go Cubs.
and then I ended up in California.
Okay.
And then from California, we moved out here, but my he's had like 13 surgeries, and it's really been very, very difficult since we moved here. So right now we're in between surgeries as well. So um, he's supposed to have another one in the fall. So I'm hoping it does not affect the high holiday services, but we'll have to see.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, so welcome to what we do. I don't know if you've seen any of the previous classes we've done that I do
I haven't.
online. No worries. That is a prerequisite for the next time you log in. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay.
No, obviously at your leisure. So by the way, this is being broadcast on my YouTube channel, just full disclosure. Um, and I've been I've been doing my Judaism 101 class since August, and all of those sessions are online. And I don't remember exactly when I started to also put the lunch and learns and the my Psalms class also on the YouTube channel, but I've been doing that for a few months now, I think. And so there are archived editions of any of this if you ever wanted to gander back to any of it. And what the Psalms class is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we go through. We're on Psalm 33. We've been going through systematically. The Judaism 101, as you might imagine, is sort of an introductory. It's meant to be introductory level. I mean, we talk about a lot of different things, but we've been doing that, and then um, this is a little bit of everything, the lunch and learn. The idea is to sort of the basis of it is the text of the Shulchan Aruch, which is one of the great texts of Jewish law from a good 500 or so years ago. That and we've been talking a lot about the matters of the details of daily prayer. We Any of these classes can potentially go on to tangents. This one, I think, goes a little more onto tangents, which is fine, because the idea is to talk about Jewish law, and hopefully in a in an accessible or reasonable way. So anyway, so that's what we're doing today, and um, what I also want to leave space for in general is, especially with Passover now being 1 week away, don't tell anyone. With Passover being about a week away, are there sort of matters of the details of preparation that anybody, would anyone like to, does anybody have a questions? Anybody want to jump in on any of those details before we get into the Shulchan Aruch? Because I feel like, since you got me here, I'm happy to help out if I can.
Okay.
So I should, I guess, remind a couple things before we get into the text. One is that you have, I think we set the deadline for selling chametz for March the 30th, and you can do that. You can do that online. You can send an email and just name and place. I do encourage a donation to the
Yes, I did.
Mazon.
I sent a donation to the rabbi's discretionary fund. I've usually sent it through Chabad, but since I'm coming to your Seder and want to know more about the synagogue, yeah, I sent it to through your, and I have my form filled out. I just have to scan it and email it back.
Fantastic. So yeah, so that's certainly appreciated. And so so in case you haven't done it yet, feel free to to do that. And then Sonia, welcome. Don't know if we've met, but glad to have you here. What I also want to note is that due to when the holiday is taking place, we're not going to have a lunch and learn the next 2 weeks. Next week is we're just before the Seder, and I'm busy. A lot of people are busy. So, and then the following week is going to be the seventh day of Passover. I'm going to be in the middle of services and etc. So, we will have so the next time we're going to do this will be April 15th. So just reminders on that. Okay. Any other questions before we get into text? So as a friendly reminder, when I share my screen, what I typically do, I guess at least for the YouTube, is that I don't, I'm not able to, at least on the device I'm on, I'm not able to see your faces. So when and if you have questions, please just, questions, comments, critiques, what have you, just feel free to just shout it out. And we will, so interrupt me as you need. Go ahead.
And I need to get off for a minute at some point and be right back on a different device after that. Just
okay.
No, I didn't leave then. I'll be back.
No problem. And Gilia, actually, if I don't, just due to my limitations of my views here, if you come back in and if I don't let you in, send me a text and let me know, hi, trying to get in, and I'll we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what you see here, hopefully on your screen, is what we left off on, which is we've been going through the last number of weeks details about the weekday Amidah, this sort of peak moment in the in our morning prayer service, and also peak moment in the afternoon or evening. And so we have so we've been talking about some details there, and now we are going into the laws of the conduct of the prayer leader during the 18 blessings, during the Amidah, and also the laws of answering Amen. Now, again, it probably behooves me to explain that there are plenty of congregations, certainly conservative congregations, in which if you're in a weekday service, you're not necessarily going to be hearing the entire Amidah out loud. A standard thing for a morning or afternoon service is, at least the traditional way, is that everyone would pray the Amidah silently, and then the prayer leader would repeat the Amidah, with a couple of other bonus portions of it as well. In many conservative synagogues, the idea is that they rely on a system known as Heicha Kedusha, in which the first three blessings are recited out loud at the beginning of the Amidah, and then everyone else recites the rest of it individually. So some of this, the reason why I say all this is that some of these details you might not see in a typical conservative synagogue. But I think it's still important to have that out there. So, all right. So going into this, after the congregation finishes their prayer, the Amidah, right? Assuming everybody has said the entire Amidah individually, the prayer leader repeats the prayer, so that if there is anyone who does not know how to pray the Amidah, that person will pay attention to what the prayer leader is saying and fulfill that person's obligation through that. So I'll finish this and then I'll comment a little bit on it. And that one who is fulfilling an obligation through the prayer of the prayer leader must pay attention to everything that the prayer leader says from beginning to end, and may not interrupt and may not converse. And that person steps 3 steps backwards, just like one who prays by oneself. So what you have here is the main purpose of the repetition of the Amidah. This is a question that people have asked me, in circumstances where we repeat the Amidah. Why are we repeating this, right? Everybody is saying the prayers on their own. Why does it need to also be said out loud? And this right here is the typical justification, which is that a prayer leader is, keep in mind that the technical term for a prayer leader, we often think that a prayer leader is, we call them the cantor, we call them the chazan. Those are more designations of somebody who has been professionally trained. So, and as we know, there are people who are professionally trained to be prayer leaders, and obviously we should accord them the proper respect. But anyone who is knowledgeable enough can be a prayer leader, can lead a service, and so the technical phrase for that is is a shaliach tzibor. A shaliach tzibor, meaning the messenger or emissary of the congregation. There was one time where, so when I was in rabbinical school, I had a part-time job as one of the people who made announcements for the seminary synagogue. And one thing that I did relatively early on is there was, another rabbinical student who was leading part of the service. I said, oh, well, Yasher Koach, good job to our chazan. And somebody who was in the room that day, who was and is an ordained cantor, came up to me and said, you really need to call them a shaliach tzibor, because I'm a chazan and I worked for a really long time to earn that title. And with all due respect to this other person who led the service, who did it, who knew it well and did a nice job, but her point was that there needs to be some some kind of distinction made for somebody who's been professionally trained as opposed to somebody who has not. And so I've tried to respect that as well. So anyway, so going back to that title, Shaliach Tzibor, that's the justification, right? Is that the person who is charged with leading the service, their main responsibility is to be a representative for everyone else in the room. And that if somebody in the room is not proficient, has not been paying close attention, or is making mistakes or whatever it is, that the prayer leader is there to cover for that person, if you will. So that's the justification often given for that. So that's not to say that a person in the room can just kind of put their feet up and just say, "Oh, okay, well, I don't really have to worry about this. The prayer leader is going to do it for me." That's not the approach that we're supposed to take. The idea is that it's a fail-safe for anybody who might get interrupted, who might be going slowly, who might not be proficient. The Shliach Tzibor is there to cover all the bases, if you will. Any questions or thoughts about that concept or that idea?
Yeah, to expand on that pretty much means if you can't read Hebrew and you have trouble with reading transliteration, you should still try to read the transliteration, not just sit there and observe. Is the idea?
Yeah, I mean that we should still we should still endeavor to do it. I mean, and this is something that I always feel is important, especially with people who come to synagogue where it's relatively new to them. They might not feel comfortable. They may not be so comfortable with reading Hebrew, or even if they do, they might feel that the prayer leader is going too quickly for them to keep up. These are very common comments that I will get, not just from when I lead the service, but in general, that people will say, "Hey, look, I'm just sounding out words here, and I feel like it takes takes me a certain amount of time to get a word out, and before I know it, we're on the next page." So by having a prayer leader, that is meant to cover for those who are taking a little bit of time or need a little time to get their skills up to the point where they can go as quickly and comfortably as the prayer leader is. It's meant to give anyone space to grow as a Hebrew reader, as as somebody who's experienced in prayer. I certainly know that I never went to a weekday morning service, at least I guess sort of like a complete one, until I was in 7th grade. Some of you know that I went to Jewish day school growing up, and the school I went to from grades K through 6 was, I would say, it was unaffiliated, but it was sort of, I guess, leaned on more of the liberal kind. And also, I mean, it was an elementary school, so the odds that we were going to do a complete and full service were pretty low to begin with. The other school I went to, though, was grades 7 through 12. And the thought is that, and that school was, I would say, more right of center, though also unaffiliated. But we had morning services, and at school, and here there were people who had been attending morning services for years could lead it very well. Especially the kids in grades 11 and 12. And, here I was, the seventh grader going, why is this going so fast? And, what have you. But thankfully, uh, the idea is that the person leading, they could pick up the slack from the slack from me, if you will. They could, the fact that I wasn't keeping up, well, they were there to help in the fulfillment of my obligation. So yeah, it's supposed to give people room to feel more comfortable. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? All right.
Does reading the English count is okay too?
I always say that prayer in any language is considered sacred. So, while I do feel that reading in Hebrew is in most cases the ideal, um, uh, I can't forget. We can't forget that this is an exercise in in worship, and you have to be able to worship in the ways that make you in which you're able to express yourself best. So, um, especially if you really want to keep up and you feel that your Hebrew is really not at the speed that you need. Okay, you know what? Prayer in English is okay. I do feel that I do like that our services at Heskamuna, at least the ones that I run, are mainly in Hebrew for numerous reasons. But yeah, if you need to go in English, you okay. All right. So, a prayer leader who entered the synagogue and found the congregation praying the quiet Amidah prayer and needs to pass before the ark, in other words, needs to get in position to lead the repetition immediately. The prayer leader goes down before the ark, in other words, takes the leader's position and prays aloud for the congregation and does not need to go back and pray quietly. Now, this is a scenario that I don't think happens all that often, at least not in the circles I've traveled in. But, in other words, where the leader in prayer shows up while everybody else is praying the quiet Amidah, and then all of a sudden needs to take his or her position as the prayer leader and to do the repetition of the Amidah. I don't think that happens very often. Usually, the person who's going to lead the service is in the room when that part of the service begins. But I guess it's possible that this will happen, and I think it could be particularly relevant if, let's say, in circumstances where you have 9 people in the room to start a service, and then the person who was assigned to lead the service for whatever reason is running late and isn't able to enter the room until that point of the service, and they become the 10th person in the service, therefore enabling him or her to be the prayer leader at that point. In other words, he or she is the one to make sure that there is now a minion in the room, thereby necessitating a prayer leader to lead. That's the scenario that I can think of, which might sound very obscure, but I think in some, would keep in mind this text was written for people of communities of all sizes, and sometimes when you're in a small community and you can barely make a minyan, which does happen, this is a scenario that that could potentially happen. Um, there was one circumstance I can remember in the synagogue in Charleston where I was, where I wasn't running the service, but it was the Sisterhood's annual Shabbat, and they had all women leading that service, and the woman who was assigned to lead the Shacharit service, the one of the earlier parts of that Shabbat morning service, um, uh, didn't show up at synagogue until about 45 minutes into the service. And we were kind of wondering where she was. And when we didn't see her in the room, somebody else started leading. And, then, 15 minutes after that, then that woman enters the room and felt pretty bad and kind of embarrassed that she wasn't there on time. And I went up to her and said, if you want to go in, if you want to lead from up to this point, it's okay. Stuff happens. We forget, we forgive you. It's okay. And she's like, no, I'm just too embarrassed, which, and it's too bad that she felt that way. But anyway, that can happen. Okay, let's see. So this is, and for those who have not, for those of you who have who are new to this class, it should be explained that what is written in the regular size type, in the larger type, is written by Joseph Caro, who was the rabbi who wrote the Shulchan Aruch. Now, Joseph Caro came from a Sephardic background, so what he is going to write about is reflective of traditions from Spain and the Middle East. Whereas we have this gloss in a smaller print. We call it the gloss. I'm not sure why we call it the gloss. It doesn't look too glossy. It looks like the same color, but we call it the gloss. And where it says Ramah, and Ramah refers to a rabbi named Moses Israelis who lived in Poland. And he will, oftentimes describe the traditions of an Ashkenazic community. So sometimes you're going to have times where Joseph Caro says this, and the Ramah basically raises his hand and says, "No, okay, well, but don't forget what we do," and which can be very useful given that so many in our community and most of the American Jewish community is of Ashkenazic descent. So this can be very useful. So he adds, and so too, if there's a pressing circumstance, for example, the leader is afraid that at the time of prayer will pass, the leader may pray aloud immediately, and the congregation prays with the leader word for word quietly until after the blessing of Ha'el HaKadosh, meaning the blessing at the end of the Kedusha, which is the third blessing of the Amidah. And it would be good if there is at least one person available to answer Amen after the blessings of the prayer leader. I feel like there was like a lot going on there. Any questions on this? Okay, we'll see if we can get a little more complicated if we want. So, okay. Now, I talked about this idea of, you're covering your bases. A congregation which prayed the Amidah, and all of them are experts in prayer themselves, nevertheless, the prayer leader should descend to lead and go back to pray in order to maintain the decree of our sages. In other words, what I explained to you earlier about this idea of, the prayer leader is there to cover all of our, cover our bases in case somebody's not too proficient at it. That is the expectation, even if you feel confident that everyone in that room is going to be praying with proficiency and intention. You still need to have the prayer leader there as a guide. Is that overkill? I don't know. I mean,
We do it, Rabbi. I mean, we do it. We say, we wait us to a certain point, and if there is like 2 or 3 people still standing, we say, if you have not completed your private prayer, please continue, and then we go on with the repetition. So we do it even today.
right. No, it's true. And well, and it brings about, I mean, and we might get into this a little bit later on in this. I'm not remembering all the topics that are covered here, but there is a question sometimes among prayer leaders, and especially for rabbis who announce the pages for the prayer leaders, whether or not the rabbi, him or herself, is also the prayer leader at that point. At what point, while people are saying the Amidah quietly, at what point is it okay to go on with the rest of the service? Meaning, if somebody is praying, if someone, maybe 2, 3, or, if there are people who are praying a good bit slower than everyone else, Richard, I'm so sorry to hear, and condolences to their family. We'll see you soon. There are, where was I? There are those who will there are those who say that if there are some people who are going way slower than everyone else, that even then you have to wait for that person to finish. That you are not going to go on to the service if there is even a single person still praying the Amidah. I don't necessarily agree. That's not to say that other people praying the Amidah, that they're not important, or they shouldn't be given time. But I think we have to try to balance the individual needs of the people in synagogue with the needs of the community. It's not just the possibility that people who've already finished their praying are going to get impatient with the person who's taking longer. It's not so much that we're trying to cater to their impatience, but rather, we do have to keep in mind that that there are, I feel, some general guidelines of decency regarding how long everything should take in a service. We do not have an infinite amount of time to pray. We are not, look, wouldn't it be nice if we had all the time we needed to all be as leisurely as possible and to fully concentrate and absorb the ideas of prayer at all times? It would be nice, but that's just not the reality. And I think especially at a time where our attention spans are shorter, it's not great to have a congregation have a reputation for having services that just go on and on and on and on.
Are you speaking just for yourself or just pretty much the viewpoint of most conservative rabbis?
I can't speak for all my colleagues, of course, but I feel like I feel like most, well, I don't know about most, but I feel at least that some pulpit rabbis that I have encountered, and I guess I just, maybe I just happen to agree with them. They recognize that there's a balance of what we're trying to accomplish in a service. That gathering for a prayer service is not simply for everyone to check off their obligation to check off their personal obligation to pray. It's not simply that. They are also trying whenever they can to there are factors in the community that have to be considered. We gather at synagogue not only for prayer, but for learning and also for community. And at a certain point, if we don't consider the importance of timeliness when it comes to all this, then we are eventually taking away from the community. I'm not saying that I feel like we need to just race through everything, with abandon. But if you're not cognizant of the time that things are taking, then eventually you run into a little bit of difficulty, and people are listen, I probably mentioned this in this space, but I think that it's an important one. I believe in the in the rule of 150, which, by the way, there are different rules of 150 out there. But the rule of 150 that I generally follow is that anything that lasts more than 150 minutes, meaning 2.5 hours, there had better be a really good reason why it's lasting that long. So, for instance, a movie. If a movie is more than 2.5 hours long, it had better be a really good movie, right? There's just something that feels really annoying about having watched a 3-hour, 3.5 hour movie and walking away going, boy, that was a waste of time. Whereas a movie that's that's short, that's shorter, you can say, well, all right, that wasn't very good, but at least it didn't last forever, right? I think this is the case also with sporting events, right? If a sporting event is more than 2.5 hours long, it had better be a really good game. Otherwise, if people are going to leave, yeah, I mean, I get it, right? And I think that I honestly feel that that's my general approach to Saturday morning services, to Shabbat morning and holiday morning services. If it lasts longer than 2.5 hours, there better be a really good reason. I think really good reasons include there's a bar bat mitzvah, right? Like a special moment in someone's life. High holidays. I think that's a pretty good reason to go longer than 2.5 hours. But in general, if you're going so long that things are just going to drag, well, at a certain point, if you start losing people, you start losing them. So maybe this is more my philosophy. I'm not sure, but I think that's part of it. Okay. Well, and that fits actually into this gloss here, where it says, if there are individuals amongst the congregation who are prolonging their prayers, the prayer leader should not wait for them, even if they are prominent people of the city. And so, too, if there was a quorum in the synagogue, they should not wait for a prominent or great person who has has not yet arrived. So, I mean, this is one of those cases, I guess, where you're kind of playing politics a little bit, but, you know, if somebody's taking a longer time, it shouldn't matter if that person is a bigwig, is a big shot in the community. It shouldn't matter. So, you should just make sure, regardless, to continue, keep in mind the needs of the community during communal prayer. Okay. All right. So now I'm a little more on conduct here. When, I don't know why it's going so slowly, but okay, here we go. When the prayer leader repeats the Amidah prayer, the congregation should be quiet and focus on the blessings the Chazan is making and respond, Amen. And if there are not 9 people who are focusing on the prayer leader's blessings, it is almost that the prayer leader's blessings are in vain. Therefore, each person should act as if there are not 9 others who are focusing other than that person and should focus on the blessings of the Chazan. Well, I mean, they're calling the prayer leader the Chazan, but yeah. And then it says, there are those who say that the entire congregation should stand when the prayer leader repeats the prayer. I don't know a lot of places that do that, but okay, fair enough. Here is where law and reality do not necessarily meet. I find that when a prayer leader repeats the Amidah, at least the part that people are not singing along with, people wind up, their attentions wind up lagging. And conversation tends to flow a little bit more during that point. How do you combat this? Well, in a sense, you really can't. I mean, if you're just, I would say that if it starts getting so loud that there's like a din in the room that's unavoidable, then I'd say, okay, we can kind of tone it down. The other thing, though, that I think is important is if you're leading those prayers and during the repetition and people are kind of, they're not really paying attention or what have you, the more you can do in a sing-song way, the better, because then you can potentially invite people in by encouraging them to sing along. Not that you have to make the whole thing a musical, but the more that you can incorporate tunes here and there, the more effective it's going to be, and the more likely you're going to gain people's attentiveness.
But Rabbi, if you do add tunes, and we do, of course, that also makes it longer.
It does. It does. So I think the question is, what kinds of tunes are you adding to it, right? So I will give an example, and Gilia, this is something that we've talked about before. The prayer Sim Shalom.
Yep.
Right? Now, my preferred tune for Sim Shalom, which Gelia we've worked on before, is Sim Shalom ba'olam tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim, which I try to do not only at a decent rate, but also there is no there's no repetition of words in that particular one.
Right.
By contrast, there is another tune that I hear quite often, which is Sim Shalom tova uvracha. Or right away, you've got repetitions of words,
right?
And people treat it as if people treat that as they say that prayer, and or they'll go into like, the next line, but then they'll go back to the beginning of the paragraph, like it's a chorus, right?
Right.
Now here's the thing. I say this in full recognition that this is usually the tune for Sim Shalom, sung by Rachel Brown, who leads us in High Holiday services at Escamona. And I want to make sure that it's clear that I'm not critiquing or criticizing her. One, I think you would get more latitude as the leader of High Holiday services. I think you should get more latitude because it's a big moment. And two, the tempo in which she leads everything is a very efficient tempo, right? She doesn't linger on certain things. And certainly, as somebody who I believe she's a very humble person, she's not lingering on words in order to show off. You do find this sometimes. I have to, I think it's fair to acknowledge sometimes people who are leading, they're like, okay, wow, I'm going to really just, put on a bit of a show here. That does not, to me, seem to be her approach. So I think you can get more latitude for something like that, depending on the circumstance and depending on the tempo that you go on, right? Somebody once said this about the Star Spangled Banner before a sporting event, right? Regardless of how you feel about whether it's the right time to do it in terms of patriotism, in terms of all that aside, if the Star Spangled Banner is like the Star Spangled Banner, like a good solid rendition of it should take under 2 minutes. You can do a nice banged up job with it, with some, hitting some good notes and everything like that in about 2 minutes. If the person's Star Spangled Banner is going on for 3 or 4 minutes, you could understand why even the most patriotic people are going to go, okay, well, let's wrap it up. It's enough. I mean, it might be the most beautiful thing you've ever heard, but come on already. There was a very prominent cantor who visited the seminary when I was a student there, and he and as a nod to his his prominence, he was offered the chance to lead services on it was a Wednesday. I remember it was a Wednesday afternoon. Okay, it was a Wednesday afternoon mincha service, afternoon service. Afternoon services on a weekday usually take about 10 minutes. Maybe 15 if you're kind of pushing it a little bit. Yes, he is a prominent cantor. Yes, he is, he's very, he's very skilled. We were 25 minutes in and he was nowhere close to being done. And this was a problem because a number of us had a class that was supposed to have started 10 minutes before. And people started leaving, and they were very torn about it because, you didn't want to insult the guy. But on the other hand, it's like, there's a time for all things, right? There's a time, there's a time for everything, right? And I think that you have to be, when you are a leader of a community, you have to keep in mind the needs of the community. I think that, and by the way, there are plenty of places where you have, cantors with, impressive skills and and where they can really do just an amazing job singing songs and everything like that. And what communities have done is from time to time they'll have a cantorial concert. And they'll have it usually on a Sunday afternoon, a Sunday evening. For a concert, they should feel like they go to town. Go to town and like have a whole, take as much time as you need to just give the most incredible vocal performance. Because the people who come are there for the incredible vocals. They're there for an incredible musical performance. Prayer and performance, those are not necessarily the same goals. And if you're just treating the leading of prayer as a performance, then you've lost the thread. Because at the end of the day, the service is about God and about our relationship with God. The more it becomes a performance, the more it becomes about the person who is performing. This is one reason why, when I talk to people leading a service, every once in a while, this usually like with kids who don't, who haven't, thought in these terms, and I don't blame them at all, but they'll say, okay, well, do I face the audience? And I'll say, well, let's not call it the audience. Let's call it the congregation. Because, and look, and there's some kids who just, they're used to performing, right? They do theater. They have great voices. That's great. That's great. And you're going to impress the socks out of us, off of us, or whatever it is, right? Where you're totally going to impress, and it's going to be a wonderful experience. Just keep in mind the purpose of what you're doing here. Keep in mind the main point of it. Well, that's my soapbox on that. We got just a couple minutes left. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments on that? All right. So I think what we've talked about today is kind of a sacred obligation, but of the leader in prayer, to note the importance of what they do. That it is, yes, it's supposed to be, pleasant to the ear, and it is supposed to be, an enjoyable experience for people in the congregation. But as the phrase goes, we should know before whom we stand. So we will talk about that. We'll explore that a bit more when we meet again. Once again, it's going to be in 3 weeks on April 15th. So file your taxes and then come to our lunch and learn at 11:30 a.m. on that day. And hopefully I will be seeing some of you in different places, online and otherwise, but wishing, of course, everyone a very happy and kosher Pesach. And I will be in Knoxville starting a week from tomorrow. So I look forward to being part of the Congregational Seder and everything else.
Rabbi, do you have your Psalm class coming up next Monday, or is that postponed as well?
So the Psalms class I do about two Monday nights per month.
Oh, okay.
So it's okay. So yeah, so I did mine most recently this past Monday. So it'll be April whatever that day is, is it the 6th, whatever that Monday is.
Okay.
I think it's April 6th will be the next one. So and that's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Shakua.
Brooke,
Yes.
yeah. All right. Good to see
Coming up to
everybody.
you.
Yeah, look forward to meeting you next week.
Likewise, likewise.
Yes.
And
Thank
so do
you.
I, Anita.
Yes, you too.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
All
Okay.
right.
Hope
Hope
all
to
of
see you
you.
soon. Thanks.